Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hey there, I'm Andre from Fine Time, which is a video game podcast that I host, and if you've heard Fine Time, you're used to me introing myself as your boy Dre over a hip-hop beat usually. Well, that's me, and I'm glad to be here again to talk about what might be my absolute favorite PlayStation 2 action game, and one of my favorite action games of all time, and that would be Shinobi, or Shinobi 2002. Or Shinobi PS2, if you will, which is why I really don't like when we name reboots the same thing as we did before, but that's another topic entirely. I love Shinobi for PS2 from 2002 with all of my heart and soul, and today I want to tell you why. Because in 2002, there was still the problem of, historically 2D franchises entering the 3D space. You know, some games did it well, some games did it not so well, and it was clear that Shinobi would have to change when it went 3D, because there was no way that particular type of 2D action platforming gameplay would be possible in 3D. It just doesn't work. It would have to be something totally different. And what ended up happening is that they made something so super unique and also very Shinobi at the same time. They achieved what they set out to do completely, and I think it's one of the best franchise updates ever. So, the first thing you get to see when you boot the game is a very well-produced CG cutscene featuring our main character Hotsuma doing some very cool ninja shit. There is a story in this game, but it doesn't really matter too much. The CG sequences are just here to look cool and strike the right tone and whatever and give context to what's happening, but you're not going to really be invested in the story. What you will be invested in is the cool ass scenes of Hotsuma slicing a helicopter in half against that perfect Night City backdrop. You remember those backdrops, right? From the 2D Shinobi games? Remember how they always featured those, super awesome, moody, nighttime skyline backgrounds of, tall buildings and the windows lit up yellow and, the roofs with, helicopter pads and stuff? You know what I mean. Shinobi 2002's levels largely take place among those very buildings. In the very first level, you're running down these streets that are neon lit by shop signs and stuff, which is basically a much more sleek version of the back alley type of stages from the original. But it doesn't feel exactly like those, and that's one way Shinobi 2002 avoids the pitfalls of other 2D to 3D conversions. They're not trying to recreate anything or convert anything from a previous Shinobi game exactly. Imagine if, Super Mario 64 tried to do, the Super Mario World aesthetic and gameplay in 3D. Not only would that have looked like hot ass, it would have played like it too. So, much like Mario 64, Shinobi 2002 is writing an entirely new playbook, while using a few key visual elements and few gameplay elements, being able to use kunai from far away and use the sword up close. You know, that's a very Shinobi thing. They even retain the thing where, you double jump and you hit the kunai button to fling them everywhere. In the 2D games, it'd be a fan, but in this game, in the 3D space, they just fling out everywhere to anyone around you, which is so cool. I love that they took something so distinctly Shinobi and made it feel something, totally different in this new context. I think that's really nice. And I think the one visual element that brings it all together is Hotsuma's headband, this long red scarf that trails all your movements in this super cool, stylish way while you do all this cool shit, run on the walls of buildings and air dash across rooftops and stuff, and this long scarf is trailing you. It's incredible to look at, and it's so much fun. All of this happens at a crucial 60 frames a second, by the way, of course, and this game has that early PS2 high frame rate look. You know the look I mean, that not anti-alias, chunky geometry, low-res textures. You know, it's like super PS2 looking, but it works for this game because they designed the levels around those limitations. You know, like Shinobi 2002 turns it into an art form, like the neon streets I mentioned earlier, but there's also like this abandoned mall with like broken shutters and long creepy hallways and stuff. And there's even like a futuristic factory level later on that really changes things up when you have to like dash through laser traps and slice and dice these robots. It gives you a different visual thing that you're not getting from the neon streets and the buildings and the temples and stuff like that. It's very cool. I love how they mix it up. Basically what I'm trying to say is the theming is super on point in Shinobi 2002, which is not something I can say for a lot of 3D games of this time. You know, they just kind of looked how they looked. It was very hard to do that kind of strong theming, but Shinobi 2002 qualifies. The music in this game is also superb, by the way. I don't really have time to go into it now because I will well overstay my welcome if I do, but just know it's very 2002 and it brings home the correct vibes. That's what Shinobi 2002 has. The vibes, baby. The vibes are immaculate, as the kids might say. So, let's talk action, because I want to get to the main gameplay hook of Shinobi 2002, the hook that makes it one of my favorite games ever. So, the enemies will come at you in groups, usually groups of 4, but sometimes more. And you know how in an old samurai movie, or even an anime, where 2 guys duel off and they run past each other and they both slash, you know? And then there's that pensive moment where you're waiting to see who falls over, like who lost the battle? Oh, is it him? Is it him? You famously see this type of duel in the opening cinematic of the NES version of Ninja Gaiden, for an example. Or tell me if you've seen this. Have you seen the thing where a swordsman is confronted by a group of enemies, let's say ninjas, and the swordsman goes slash, 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 slash. He cuts out all the ninjas one by one as they approach him, and they're all frozen in place. Then the swordsman stops and like puts a sword away all cool and calm, and then the ninjas all die suddenly, dramatically at the same time. Fwah! Like all their slash wounds just appear and just go psh, and like spray blood, or they get cut in half at once or something. You know what I'm talking about, right? That kind of cinematic flourish. That is the entire basis of Shinobi 2002's gameplay, and it's incredible. So like I said, enemies will come at you in groups, and you're fighting them all, and you kill one, and they dark out, and they freeze in place. Then you kill the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And when you kill them all, the game freezes and strikes like a dramatic angle, and then Hotsuma puts his sword away and says like a cool one-liner, and all the enemies simultaneously split in half. Pardon my language, but it's one of the coolest fucking things I've ever seen in a video game. It's so amazing. My jaw was on the floor. Wow. And then the next group of enemies came, and I did it again. And again. And I love the various cool poses Hotsuma would strike, or the various one-liners he would say. I could not get enough. I thought it was the best thing ever, and to a degree, I still think it is. It's a unique kind of thrill that no other game has provided for me before or since, if I'm being honest. And it's fun because, not just because it looks cool, but because there's skill behind it too. In order to pull off this cinematic flourish, or tate as it's known, to pull off a tate combo, you have to kill these guys in fairly rapid succession. If you let more than a few seconds go by between kills, the guys you already killed go poof, and then the tate combo does not happen. So you really need to be on it, you know? But the best part about all of this is that it's not just a skill challenge for high score or something, although it is that too, because there is a stage ranking system, as was common back then. But doing a tate combo is not just fluff, it's also gameplay. The strategy in tate is the strategy of the game itself, and that's for a couple reasons. Number 1, the bigger your tate combo, the more powerful your sword gets. This means that if the group of enemies before you is, 4 flying enemies and a tank, if you go after the tank first, it's going to take forever to kill because your sword is weak and it's a goddamn tank, right? Plus the flying enemies will be pelting you with shots and like the whole thing will be a mess, right? But If you go after the weaker flying enemies first to build up sword power on them, and then you go after the tank last, you'll kill the tank in like 1 or 2 hits, because your sword power will be so sky high after killing those other 4 enemies first, thus completing the combo. So the game basically makes you assess every situation, every group of enemies, like, okay, how should I do this? And then you make those decisions on the fly while they're attacking you, which is very engaging and really incredible gameplay. Just the best. This power-up philosophy also applies to bosses too, by the way, and the bosses are assholes in this game. So building up power on their minions, sometimes 7, 8, or 9 minions, and then going after them, deals a blow so powerful that you can sometimes take them out in a single hit, if you play your cards right. It is wildly fun to pull off something like that. It is so cool. It makes you feel like a total badass, as you should in a ninja game, right? That's exactly what you should feel like. So besides sword power, the second reason why Tate is integral to gameplay is because it's integral to your health. This sword Hotsuma is using is cursed, and it feeds off of killing your enemies and absorbing their yang into the sword, which fills up some of your yang meter. But this meter slowly depletes the whole time you're playing, which means you gotta keep it moving in this game and keep killing. You don't have time to dick around, because when that yang depletes, the sword will start taking from your actual life meter instead. Yikes. So you gotta keep moving forward and killing guys at a fairly reasonable pace, or else you could find yourself in big trouble. So where Tate comes key is that when you pull off a Tate combo, you get like 3 times more yang than you normally would, really sating your sword big time and filling up that bar, so you don't have to worry about it. Also, if you do a combo, the enemies are more likely to drop yen to refill your life bar, or like more kunai, or other rewards, so it's in your best interest to pull these combos off whenever possible for many, many reasons other than just looking cool. One of my favorite things in games is when, like, gameplay systems feed off each other and into each other, you know? And boy, does Shinobi 2002 have that. And if what I said about your life draining sounds stressful, I promise you it's not. You won't have to master this game or do everything perfectly to keep your yang meter up. As long as you do a Tate combo at least like every once in a while, and you don't dawdle too much, you'll be totally fine. These levels aren't meant to be like explored or anything like that. They're just meant to like move through. So as long as you do that, you'll be fine, I promise. But the kills in this game also just have this visceral fun because they're, I don't want to say gruesome necessarily, but you are slicing demons and other ninjas and stuff in half, you know? Shinobi 2002 is rated mature, and it does carry a darker tone than the Shinobi games before it, but it doesn't feel fake like, this may get me in trouble, but not like Tomb Raider 2013 or like its sequels where they turn her deaths into a torture horror movie, you know, like Saw or something like that. It's not like that. Because, well, it's PS2 graphics, so they can't do that. But Shinobi 2002's tone just feels like a natural evolution of the series. Kind of like how Ninja Gaiden 2004 was also rated mature, you know? I don't like those Ninja Gaiden games for the record, but they're similar in that kind of aged up tone, so I thought I'd mention it. I want to talk about the last boss for a second, too, because it was probably one of the more memorable things I've ever done while playing a game. So here's what happened. I get to this last boss back in the day, and I was struggling. I had no idea how to beat this guy. And then I got an idea. And it kind of worked, but it was really tough and I couldn't quite pull it off. I tried over and over and over again for like a solid 3 hours, from like midnight to 3 a.m. Could not do it. And I was like, okay, that's enough. It's time for a break, because it was clear I was doing worse and worse the more I tried because my concentration was going. You know, I'm just not the type to be able to do something like that repetitive for that long, you know? So I needed to step back, and I did. I got up, I had a soda, I did something on the computer, and like 30 minutes later, I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm beating this guy. Yeah, so I turned the game back on, and on my very first try, I destroyed him. I turned that son of a bitch inside out. He barely even touched me. I think he hit me like once during the entire encounter. I dusted his ass. It was amazing. It was an absolutely euphoric feeling because I went from beating my head against the wall to galaxy brain clarity all of a sudden. I don't know what it was that came over me, but I just saw the whole thing and I saw right through that asshole of a boss. So yeah, I'll remember that one for life. And of course, that's just a personal anecdote, and I'm not trying to present my personal memories as a mark of quality, because, quite frankly, I really don't like when other people do that, so I'm not going to do that either. But I wanted to share this story because it's those kinds of moments that can only happen when you have the right mechanics with the right difficulty, and it gives you that drive, to keep trying until you do it. That boss moment was only possible because Shinobi 2002 was built to have it by being what it is with its gameplay. Because, sometimes it takes a special game to provide a special moment, So, to wrap up, I'll just leave you with this. I don't think a game like Shinobi 2002 can ever happen again. I think this was a very specific game for a very specific time that looked and played a specific way, and that's not something we can most likely ever replicate. We simply don't make action games like this anymore. It occupies such a unique space and flavor all to itself. And I'm not saying this in like it was better back in the day kind of way. I'm saying in a, I love how one of a kind this game is kind of way. I love and appreciate Shinobi 2002 for exactly what it is, warts and all, because this game is not perfect by any means, but it's perfect for me. And if anything I've said about this game sounds appealing to you, then maybe it'll be perfect for you too. But that's it from me for now. Again, I'm Andre from the Fine Time Podcast, and I'll catch you later. Happy gaming!
Have you ever been reading through a stack of comics and thought, maybe I should see what this Arkham Asylum game is all about? Or been playing Marvel vs. Capcom and felt like you were at a real disadvantage since you didn't know who half the characters were? Well, Play Comics is the show for you. I'm Chris, and each episode we take a look at video games based on comic properties and how well they stick to that source material. So whether you know the comics and want to know how all these games work, or you know the games and want to find out where all this craziness came from, go check out Play Comics at playcomics.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.